So, Rudra, you are quite an enthusiast for Formula One.
Yes, Formula One, I think it's a great sport. It's a pinnacle of the motorsport, and it is the top 1% of drivers. It is the top 1% of teams competing for that one championship every year.
So, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
What kind of got you into F1 in the first place?
So, I was born in Singapore, and my family is Indian. I am Indian as well. But being born in Singapore, I feel like I was exposed to a lot more culture and a lot more sportsmanship. And over there, this is an anecdote my mother always tells me, that my first word was car when I saw a Ferrari speed past my family. So I guess I've always been interested in cars, and in Singapore there's a circuit itself. So I think I had the privilege of watching Kimi Räikkönen win.
I see.
One of those years. So yeah, I think since I was a child, I was quite interested in Formula One and motorsports and cars in general.
What makes F1 different to any other motorsport? What makes it unique?
Ask any person the best motorsport they know. Maybe some Americans will say the Indy 500. Maybe some Europeans will say Le Mans. But everybody else, the majority of the population knows that Formula One is the top 1%. And that top 1%, they are that top 1% because they have that skill. They have that route to F1 which carries out throughout the world. Every single year you have more drivers coming up, you have more people signing up to be part of Formula One in the form of engineers, in the form of race directors, and there are a lot more roles it is taking up, and it is great, and it shows excellence in hard work, because technically the teams are supposed to have the same price cost, the same price cap, so they're supposed to use the same amount of money, and yet they make completely different cars with completely different pace.
For someone that doesn't know how F1 works, how would you explain it in layman terms?
20 people, 20 of the best drivers in the world racing for 10 teams. So there's 10 teams. Right now the leading team, McLaren, they are doing amazing this season. Just a few years ago they're at the bottom of the table and now they're at the top. So 10 teams, 20 drivers. On Friday they go out on the track, they take the car around, they test the car, and that's Friday, that's called practice. And then they have 3 of those practice sessions. On Saturday, they have qualifying. So each driver goes out, does one really fast lap, and through 3 series of qualifying, it determines the position they start at. So, and then Sunday, the main event, the race, you have F1 cars seated at the track, one formation lap, and then they have 45 to 57 laps in the circuit, and whoever finishes first. Between which they have strategies relating to pit stops, exchanging driver positions, and penalties.
Okay. What's your favorite team?
Okay, my favorite team is Mercedes. I feel like I supported Ferrari when I was a child, because what child does not love the red of Ferrari? But later, watching Lewis Hamilton win so many years back to back with Nico Rosberg, that really got me into Mercedes, and I've still been loyal even after Lewis has left. And I think Kimi and George are a great pair for the Mercedes drivers.
So what are the attributes that actually make a team excel in Formula One?
So number one you have is the car. So each team has 2 cars, and they are supposed to perfect their car in the span of a few months after the last season. They're supposed to take all the data they have from their airfoils. There's an aerodynamics team, there's an engineering team, there's a power unit team. So each team does not make their own engine, but they source it from either Honda or a few other Japanese and European makers, and then they tune their engines themselves.
So Mercedes will not be using a Mercedes engine?
See, Mercedes uses a Mercedes engine, but a team like Williams also uses a Mercedes engine.
Okay.
So teams do share engines, but they have different fine tuning on it, and they have different engineering that goes around how the car is built, its aerodynamics, its speed, and how much downforce it has, the DRS system. So a lot of things go into play related to physics, related to aerodynamics, and especially the engineering of how low the car can run, because that's what gives it speed around the corners.
What do you mean by fine tuning? You mean every single aspect?
Every single aspect.
Optimized.
So, optimized. So from the front wing, there's going to be a millimeters difference that can make 0.1 seconds, that can make you 0.1 seconds slower. And if that happens, you're 3 places down the grid in qualifying.
Okay.
So just that 1 millimeter of error can cost you 3 places.
So there's a tremendous difference.
There is a tremendous difference. And that is why you see some teams fail some days, some teams excel some days, because you can have good days in Formula One. But to have a consistent team and to win championships, you need to be perfect every single time, and that's what makes the team stand out.
F1, I believe there is a track in India.
There is, yeah. It's the one in Noida, the Buddha International Circuit. If I'm not wrong, I think 2010 and 2011, they had a Grand Prix here, and Sebastian Vettel won one of his championships here. So it is quite an iconic track, and I feel like India has lost a little bit of part in not counting F1 as a sport, but they count it as entertainment. And when you count something as entertainment, there's a lot more bureaucracy and a lot more things they have to get through to get the government to sanction the race to happen, because it's considered as entertainment, not as a sport. So there's more taxation, and I think that's what led F1 away from India now. But of course, MotoGP, that's the bike version, the motorbike racing version of F1. That's the pinnacle of motorbike racing. That happened in the Berlin International Circuit a few years back. So F1 and other motorsport series are making a comeback in India, but I think it's going to be quite challenging, considering how India needs to still become a little more forward thinking in motorsport and open up more opportunities.
Are you friends with other F1 fans in India?
I am friends. I feel I am friends with many of them. I think there was the last race, Miami race. I think it was at 1:30 in the morning for us, and yet 3 of my friends had come over to my place and we were watching it with some chips and food. So we do have that fan base where maybe we can take out one night and, you know, have a good evening out while watching F1. And I feel
how
like it's
long
quite
does it
interesting.
normally go? Like, how long are you watching?
So the
this?
race itself is usually 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on how slow it goes, any red flags or anything. So it's usually 2 hours. So it's shorter than an IPL match, I would say. Easier to watch.
Would you say starting a race, if someone driver is doing well, is it quite open to unpredictability? Things can change rapidly?
Things can change rapidly, but it's rare to see that happen. I feel like that sudden change and that the volatility, I guess, in the drivers is narrowing, because now they are just so much more perfect. Because there are so many more people applying and dreaming to be in F1, there is so much more perfection in that. So all the drivers are pretty much matched on skill. Definitely there's a huge difference in some of the drivers, but there is an average skill base that sets the drivers up.
You were talking about also optimizing things. What do you mean by this price cap?
So the FIA, the bureau that controls the sport of F1, they limit each team to a certain amount of money they can spend each year on making their car. So this is a strict rule. Like, they cannot cross it to the dollar. It has to be below that cap. So that's why I guess you see the cars getting closer, because this this price cap has been just put in recently. So you see the gap between the bottom and the top maybe getting closer, but there is still so much difference, because the teams that have continuously won in the past do continue to win in the future, because they already know the secrets, they already have the architecture for that, so they're able to better optimize each year. Whereas a newer team or a team that has not won that many championships, they have to experiment and then they have to come up with the architecture, while the other teams are just optimizing on their previous architecture.
So in a team, obviously, when we look at F1, we normally just think of the driver, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot that goes on behind
there's
the
a
scenes.
lot that goes on behind the scenes.
The stuff behind the scenes, can you talk about that? What kind of dimensions do you have in the team?
Okay, so each team has 2 drivers. Now you think, do they prefer one driver? So there's 2 championships, the drivers championship and the team championship. So team is obviously both the drivers' points added up. So now a team like Red Bull, they have a dominant number 1 driver, which is Max Verstappen. And then his number 2 keeps on changing, because nobody can keep up with Max. I think he is at the top of the skill set in the drivers of the grid right now. So, but then again, you look at some new players like Kimi Antonelli. He got a pole in sprint race, and he's, I think, a month older than me.
Oh,
And he just got first place in the qualifying for the sprint race.
okay.
So it is definitely amazing to see people even my age do something so significant in a place where perfection is so important.
So you're talking about, behind the scenes, you also have the people who kind of change the tires really rapidly?
Okay, so that's the pit crew and that's the strategies. So each driver, they have a race engineer. Their race engineer tells them, okay, this is your tire degrading, this is your temperatures, take care of this. Signs behind you, 1.5, and then Lewis Hamilton will say, should I let him pass too? So obviously, the radio, it helps them understand what else is going on track, because obviously they have to keep looking ahead. They can't wait to figure out what's happening. They have to be told through radio. And each F1 tire cannot go through the entire race.
Why?
So the rubber that they make, it has to be very grippy, so that they can take turns at fast speeds. Now this grip, it wears out slowly and it makes the rubber tear. And eventually, I think it's around 30 to 50 miles where each tire runs out and you have to change after that. And the race is a little longer than that, so you always have to have a pit stop in the race so that you can change tires. Now the tires also have ratings. There's a soft tire, hard tire, medium tire. So the softer tire will have the most grip but the least life. So you're faster but for less time. And then the hard tire, you'll be slower but you'll go a longer distance for more time.
So obviously you're talking about optimizing the entire
Strategy,
metrics of
yeah.
the strategy and the car itself.
If you want to start with the soft tire and then you want to end with the hard tire, do you want to start fast or do you want to go slow and steady and then end the race with a really fast
so there's
tire?
a whole bunch of contingencies.
whole bunch. They have planned double Z's.
So
It
they've
goes
planned
down to
everything to
that.
a
They
T.
have-
the
yeah.
teams, everything. The
Everything,
car, they've
yeah.
optimized things. You're talking about the price cap and even the types of tire they start and end with.
They have a limited set of tires they have to control if they want to use those tires in qualifying, where they want to set up the drivers at the starting of the grid, or they want to use those tires for the race itself.
We're talking about this stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Now, how important is it to have a good team and a good car versus the driver itself?
No matter how good a driver you are, with the tractor, there's only so much you can do,
Yeah.
is what F1 enthusiasts like to say.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to appreciate the fact that drivers alone can do so much for a team. Red Bull is often criticized to not have a good car, and maybe that is true to some extent, but we still see Max Verstappen deliver every single day. And the second driver, not at all, ever in the recent at least 2-3 years. The second driver has not been on par with Max Verstappen. So there is a huge difference with the driver and the team. A team can take rookie drivers such as Kimi Antonelli, the one I was talking about, the one my age. He is definitely an amateur driver. He does not have the experience that the others do on track. But still the team have given him the practice, the team have given him the instructions, and the team have brought him up to a sense where he is fully aware of what's happening at level with everybody else because of the support structure he has inside his team.
I see. So it's as important having a good
Good
base behind
team
you.
as being talented.
And what is it like being in the driver's seat of an F1 vehicle?
I wish I knew that secret myself. I always dream about that. If I have a son or a daughter who's interested in racing, I would definitely want them to go the path of F1, because not only does it seem to be the top 1% of motorsport, it seems to be a life you would really enjoy. You're traveling the world, you're racing cars around streets, you have people cheering, and you're the center of a sport that you're dominating in. So that dream is definitely a great dream for, I think, millions of people around the world that they have, and only 20 of them make it to the grid every year.
My understanding is that someone who's sitting in the car,
Yeah.
I've never sat in one, but I understand that their neck has to be very strong.
Okay, so there's a few things about this. We think that they're just a driver.
Yeah.
They need to step on the pedal, gas, brake, turn it around a little. That is not true at all. So I think you've heard about fighter jets saying G-forces when they pull up. G-force,
Yeah, yeah.
G-force. So pilot jet, fighter pilots experience around 7 to 8 Gs before they pass out. 7 to 8 Gs is a maximum limit. And in a recent crash of Max Verstappen, he went through a 52 G crash. Not 5.2, 52.
Damn.
So 6 times what an aircraft pilot of a fighter jet normally goes through when they're about to pass out. 6 times of that in one crash.
So it's incomprehensible.
Incomprehensible. And your neck, your body structure and your seat has to be so perfect and has to be so pronounced, and you have to make sure that you have totally worked yourself out. You have built that muscle, you have built the muscle memory, you know how to brace yourself, and you obviously have that muscle structure to protect yourself.
My understanding is it's also quite hot
It
in
is,
that
it
car.
is. So drivers tend to lose around 4 kilos in a race.
In one race.
By just sweating.
Just by sweating.
Just sweating, yeah.
Okay, and who is your favorite all-time driver? Like a legend?
Michael Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher.
So this is back in 2005 when he was...
I think so, yeah. I think this is controversial, but if Lewis won in 2021, it would have been Lewis. I know he lost it in a controversial way, but he lost it nevertheless. So Michael Schumacher is still my GOAT.
And your favorite circuit?
I'm biased, so both international circuit.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
Last question. This F1 season, how would you describe it? How would you rate it?
Oscar Piastri is not a number 2 driver. That is all I can say.
Awesome. And normally we have a closing tradition on this little chat, and that is, for anyone that's watching this, do you have a general piece of advice you could give them?
Tomorrow might be better, but make today great.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being a part of
Thank
this,
you.
brother.
Thank you so much.
And thanks
Great
for sharing
seeing
your
you.
story.